There is a specific kind of pain that only English learners know. Someone says something to you, you understand it perfectly, the meaning is completely clear, and you have something to say back, you genuinely have a response. But between the moment you understand and the moment you speak, there is a gap, a pause that stretches just long enough to feel wrong, a silence that the other person fills before you have had a chance to say what you wanted to say. And you watch the conversation move forward without you, carrying the words you never got to use. Or maybe it goes slightly differently. Maybe you do speak, but by the time your response arrives, the energy of the moment has passed. The comment that would have been funny 10 seconds ago now falls flat. The question that would have been perfect is now answered by someone else. The point you wanted to make is no longer quite the right point for where the conversation has moved. You were right on time in your head and too late in the world. This is the speed problem, and it is one of the most commonly reported frustrations among intermediate and advanced English learners. Not comprehension, not vocabulary, not even grammar, speed. The inability to process, formulate, and produce English quickly enough to participate in real conversation at the pace that real conversation moves. And here is what makes it particularly frustrating. The learners who experience this most acutely are often not beginners. They are people who have invested significant time in English, people who understand the language well, people who can write clear, accurate, thoughtful English when they have time to compose, people who can follow complex discussions, read challenging texts, watch English content without subtitles, and yet in live conversation, they are always slightly behind, always reaching for the speed that seems to come so effortlessly to the people they are speaking with. Why? Why does all that knowledge, all that study, all that investment in the language not automatically translate into fast thinking and fast speaking? What is the actual bottleneck, and how do you remove it? Those are the questions this program answers. Over 7 lessons, we are going to go inside the processing machinery of English, identify exactly where the slowdowns are happening, and give you specific, practical, research-backed training methods that will genuinely increase your thinking and speaking speed in English, not by rushing, not by cutting corners, but by training the cognitive processes that underlie fast language until they become as automatic and effortless as the same processes are for the native speakers around you. Before we get into the lessons, I want to establish one foundational idea that makes everything else make sense. Speed in language is not a personality trait. It is not something you either have or do not have. It is not a reflection of your intelligence or your aptitude for language. Speed is a function of automaticity. The faster and more automatically your brain can perform the underlying operations of language, the faster your language becomes. And automaticity is built through one thing: the right kind of practice applied consistently over time. Every native speaker who seems to think in English effortlessly got there through decades of daily immersive use, thousands upon thousands of hours of processing and producing English until every component operation became completely automatic. They did not wake up one day fast. They became fast through accumulation, and you can do the same. Not in decades, not if you practice the right things deliberately. The brain is far more trainable than most people believe, and the specific training methods in this program are designed to target exactly the cognitive operations that need to become faster. The speed you want is coming. Let us build it. But before lesson 1, I want to give you one more idea that will reframe everything that follows. Most people think of speed as the finishing line. First you learn the language, then you become fluent, then you become fast. Speed is the last thing to arrive, the final polish on top of everything else. But this sequencing is wrong, and believing it keeps learners stuck in a holding pattern, always feeling they need to know more before they can start working on speed. Here is the truth. Speed is not the reward at the end of the learning process. Speed is a dimension of learning that needs to be trained alongside everything else. A musician who spends years playing a piece slowly, perfectly, carefully, and then decides to work on speed at the end will find the speed much harder to build than a musician who played at challenging tempos from the beginning. The slow, careful practice has entrenched slow, careful neural patterns. Undoing them requires active retraining. The same applies to English. If you have spent years doing slow, careful, deliberate English, reading carefully, writing carefully, speaking carefully, you have built slow, careful neural patterns. Speed requires building different ones, not abandoning the careful ones, but adding the fast ones alongside them. And the time to start building fast patterns is not after you feel ready. It is now, at whatever level you are, in whatever ways your current level permits. That is exactly what this program enables you to do. Starting now. 1. What speed actually is. The 4 cognitive bottlenecks slowing you down. Before you can fix a problem, you need to understand exactly what the problem is. And the problem of slow English is not one problem. It is 4 separate cognitive bottlenecks, each one located at a different point in the chain of operations that produces spoken language. And if you are trying to become faster without knowing which bottleneck is actually slowing you down, you are training blindly. You might be working on bottleneck 3 when your real problem is bottleneck 1. Understanding all 4 allows you to target your practice precisely. Let me walk you through each one. The first bottleneck is lexical retrieval speed. This is the speed at which individual words are retrieved from memory when you need them. In your native language, word retrieval is almost instantaneous. You think of a concept and the word arrives in milliseconds, below the threshold of conscious awareness. You never notice the retrieval happening because it is so fast and so automatic that it is effectively invisible. But in English, for learners who have not built up sufficient retrieval automaticity, word retrieval is slower. You think of the concept, you know the word exists, and there is a perceptible delay before the word arrives. That delay, multiplied across every word in every sentence, adds up to a speaking pace that is measurably slower than a native speaker's. The second bottleneck is grammatical encoding speed. This is the speed at which you apply grammatical rules to produce correct sentence structures. When you were first learning English grammar, applying each rule was a conscious, effortful process. You had to think about tense, about agreement, about word order, about which preposition to use. Over time, some of those processes have become more automatic, but for many learners, certain grammatical operations are still slow enough to create pauses and hesitations. The pause before a conditional structure, the hesitation before a reported speech construction, the brief stall while you decide between present perfect and simple past. Each of these is a micro bottleneck in grammatical encoding, and they compound into a speaking pace that feels labored. The third bottleneck is conceptual translation lag. This is perhaps the most important and the least discussed of the 4. Conceptual translation lag is what happens when, instead of encoding a thought directly in English, your brain encodes it first in your native language and then translates. Even learners who consider themselves fairly advanced often have this happening at a subconscious level. They believe they are thinking in English, but what is actually happening is a very fast translation process that they are not consciously aware of. And this translation, even when it is fast, adds latency. Every thought that takes a conceptual detour through your native language adds processing time before the English output can begin. The fourth bottleneck is phonological assembly speed. This is the speed at which your brain assembles the sounds of a word or phrase into a ready-to-speak motor sequence. In your native language, the sound patterns of words are stored as ready-made motor programs. You do not need to figure out how to pronounce a word you know well. The pronunciation is already packaged and ready to execute. But in English, for less practiced words and phrases, phonological assembly can require a small but real amount of extra processing time. The word feels slightly unfamiliar in your mouth. You are not entirely sure how to sequence the sounds quickly, and that uncertainty creates a hesitation that is felt both by you and by the listener. Now here is the important thing. Each of these bottlenecks responds to different training. Lexical retrieval speed is improved by massive vocabulary practice in production, not just recognition. Grammatical encoding speed is improved by drilling specific structures until they are automatic. Conceptual translation lag is reduced by building direct English associations for concepts and by practicing thinking in English deliberately. Phonological assembly speed is improved by extensive repetitive speaking practice with specific vocabulary until the sound patterns become motor habits. Most learners, when they try to get faster, do something vague like trying to speak more, and speaking more does help generally. But targeted training against specific bottlenecks produces results several times faster than general practice. Over the next 6 lessons, we are going to address each bottleneck directly, with specific methods and specific drills designed to produce real, measurable improvement in your English processing speed. Before we move to the next lesson, I want to say one more thing about the bottleneck framework that I think is important. Knowing which bottleneck is primary for you personally is powerful information. Take a moment to reflect honestly on your own experience. When you are in a fast English conversation and you cannot keep up, What does the slowdown feel like from the inside? Is it that you cannot find the words, suggesting lexical retrieval is the primary bottleneck? Is it that you know the words, but the sentence structure feels labored, suggesting grammatical encoding? Is it that the words and grammar are fine, but there is a delay between the thought and the English, suggesting translation lag? Or is it that you are falling behind on the incoming speech before you have even started responding, suggesting listening speed? Your honest answer to this question tells you where to invest the most practice effort. And that targeted investment is the difference between slowly improving across the board and rapidly improving exactly where it counts most. The speed you want is not a mystery. It is a set of cognitive processes, and cognitive processes, and cognitive processes can be trained. 2. Lexical speed training, teaching your brain to find words instantly. Words are the atoms of language. Everything else, grammar, structure, prosody, discourse management, depends on having words arrive when you need them, and for most learners, word retrieval under conversational time pressure is the most immediately felt bottleneck. The word that you know perfectly well in a relaxed moment is the word that vanishes precisely when you need it most. The vocabulary that feels solid when you are reading disappears when you are speaking under pressure. The reason this happens is one we explored in an earlier program: the difference between recognition-based retrieval and production-based retrieval. When you read or hear a word, your brain recognizes it through the recognition pathway, which is trained by input. When you need to speak a word, your brain must retrieve it through the production pathway, which is trained by output. Most learners have done enormous amounts of input practice and relatively little output practice, so recognition is fast and automatic while production is slow and effortful. The training solution is to build the production retrieval pathway to match the strength of the recognition pathway. And the way to do that is through a specific kind of practice that forces rapid under-pressure word retrieval repeatedly until the brain builds the automatic connections that make words available on demand. Here is the first drill. I call it the rapid word association chain. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Choose a topic, any topic, one that you know something about. Now speak continuously about that topic as fast as you comfortably can while still being coherent, without pausing for more than 1 second at any point. When a word is not immediately available, do not stop to search for it. Approximate it, describe it, or skip it and keep moving. The rule is continuous output. The goal is not perfect vocabulary selection. The goal is to train your brain to keep retrieving and producing words without the hesitation habit, because the hesitation habit is partly what makes retrieval slower. Every time you pause and search, you are reinforcing the behavior of pausing and searching. Every time you keep moving and approximate, you are reinforcing the behavior of continuous production. Do this drill every day for at least 5 minutes. After 3 weeks of daily practice, most learners report a noticeable increase in how readily words arrive during real conversation. The second drill addresses a specific dimension of lexical speed that is rarely trained: semantic field activation. Here is the problem. In natural conversation, words do not arrive one at a time. They arrive in clusters, in semantic neighborhoods. When you are talking about a stressful situation at work, all the words related to stress, pressure, deadlines, management, expectations, overwhelm should be simultaneously more available because your brain has primed that semantic neighborhood. Native speakers have highly efficient semantic field activation. When one word in a field is activated, the surrounding words become more accessible, reducing retrieval time across the entire conversation on that topic. Learners often lack this efficiency because they learned vocabulary in isolated lists rather than in thematic clusters. The word stress was learned alongside unrelated words like describe and agriculture, rather than alongside deadline, overwhelm, pressure, manage, cope, burnout, and exhaustion, which are the words that would naturally co-occur with stress in real conversation. The training fix is topic-based vocabulary clustering. Choose a topic you regularly discuss in English, write down every single word and phrase connected to that topic that you know in English, organize them by sub-theme, then practice speaking about that topic intensively for 5 to 10 minutes at a time until every word in the cluster becomes hyper-available when that topic comes up. Do this for the 10 or 20 topics that come up most in your English conversations. The result is a brain that, when it enters one of those conversational territories, has an entire vocabulary neighborhood primed and ready, with dramatically faster retrieval across all of it. The third drill is the fastest and possibly the most powerful. It is called timed image description. You find a photograph, an interesting image, any image, and you describe everything in it as quickly and as specifically as you can for 60 seconds. Everything. The colors, the shapes, the people, the mood, the setting, the implied story, the emotional atmosphere. You push yourself to find words constantly, rapidly, without pause. This drill is powerful because images activate vocabulary across multiple semantic fields simultaneously, forcing broad, rapid lexical retrieval rather than the narrow retrieval that comes with topic-specific conversation. It is a full workout for the word-finding system compressed into 60 seconds. Build the production pathway, train rapid retrieval, make words arrive before you need them, not after. One important note about these drills: they are uncomfortable by design. When you push your retrieval speed and hit the wall where words stop arriving fast enough, your instinct will be to slow down. Resist that instinct. The moment just before a word arrives, the reaching, the straining, is exactly the moment of training. That is the neural activation that builds the faster pathway. Slow down too soon and you miss the training stimulus. Stay in the discomfort 1 or 2 seconds longer than you want to, and that is where the adaptation happens. Think of it exactly like physical training. The last few repetitions, the ones that feel almost impossible, are the ones that produce the growth. The comfortable repetitions maintain. The uncomfortable ones advance. 3. Grammar automation. From thinking about rules to speaking through them. Here is a test. Say this sentence out loud right now as fast as you can without thinking. If I had known you were coming, I would have prepared something. Now say this one. By the time she arrived, we had already finished. Now this one. He suggested that we reconsider the decision. If any of those produced a small hesitation, a brief stall before you started, a slight roughness in the delivery, you have just located a grammatical and coding bottleneck. Not because you do not know those structures, you probably do, but knowing a structure in the declarative sense, being able to recognize it and understand it, is completely different from having it automated to the point of instant fluent production. And the structures you cannot produce instantly create exactly the microsecond delays that accumulate into slow English. Grammar automation is the process of moving grammatical structures from conscious knowledge into unconscious automatic execution. It is the difference between a beginner driver who has to consciously think about every movement of the steering wheel and the gear shift, and an experienced driver who navigates complex traffic while simultaneously having a conversation, because every physical operation of driving has become fully automatic. When grammar is fully automated, you do not apply rules when you speak. You produce structures. The rule was the training instruction. Once training is complete, the rule disappears and the structure just comes out. The way a native speaker says, "I have been waiting here for an hour," without thinking about present perfect continuous. The way they say, "if I were you," without stopping to remember the subjunctive. The structure arrives already grammatical, already correct, without any conscious rule application at the moment of speaking. The method for automating grammar structures is called drilling to automaticity. It is different from the grammar exercises in textbooks, which are slow, careful, and conscious by design. Drilling to automaticity is fast, oral, and repetitive, designed specifically to move a structure from conscious knowledge into automatic execution. Here is how to do it. Choose one grammatical structure that you know but cannot produce quickly. Let us say the second conditional. The form is if plus past simple, would plus infinitive. You know this. Now you are going to drill it to automaticity. Set a timer for 5 minutes. During those 5 minutes, you are going to say second conditional sentences, one after another, as fast as you can, changing the content each time but keeping the structure. If I had more time, I would travel more. If she lived closer, we would see each other more often. If they offered me the job, I would take it. If he spoke better English, he would get a promotion. If the weather were nicer, we would go outside. Do not stop between sentences except to breathe. Do not slow down to check the structure. Push the speed. 5 minutes of this done daily for a week will move the second conditional from something you construct consciously to something that arrives automatically when the context requires it. This is the key insight about grammar automation that most learners never get. Grammar structures become automatic not through understanding them better but through producing them faster and more often than comfortable, until the production becomes a habit rather than a calculation. The most important structures to automate for conversational speed are the ones that appear most frequently in real conversation. The question forms, especially the inversion that requires swapping subject and auxiliary verb. The perfect aspects, present perfect, past perfect, present perfect continuous, the passive voice, the reported speech transformations, the conditional structures, especially second and third conditional, modal verbs in their full range of meanings. These structures are high frequency enough that slow encoding of any of them creates noticeable drag in conversational speed. For each one, use the drilling method I described. Find the structure, know the pattern, drill it at speed until it becomes effortless. Across all these structures, the cumulative effect of automation is a grammatical encoding system that operates so quickly and so automatically that it effectively disappears from your conscious experience. You stop thinking about grammar and start thinking about meaning. And that shift from grammar conscious to meaning focused is one of the most defining differences between an intermediate speaker and a fluent one. Let me close this lesson with a thought about what it actually feels like when a grammatical structure becomes fully automated. Most learners expect a dramatic moment of mastery, a day when the structure suddenly feels easy, but it is more subtle and more surprising than that. You are in a conversation, speaking naturally, and a few minutes later you realize you used the third conditional twice without noticing. You were not thinking about the structure, you were thinking about what you were saying. And the structure was just there, correct and invisible, having assembled itself without any conscious involvement. That is the moment. That is what automated grammar feels like. And it happens first with structures you have drilled hundreds of times and then gradually with more and more of your English until most of your grammar runs the same way. Invisible, automatic, yours. 4. Thinking in English. Eliminating the translation layer once and for all. Of all the bottlenecks we are addressing in this program, the one that produces the greatest speed gains when it is genuinely eliminated is the translation layer. The conceptual translation lag, that subconscious routing of thoughts through your native language before expressing them in English, is not just a source of delay. It is the fundamental reason that so many learners feel like they can never quite keep up, no matter how much vocabulary and grammar they know. The knowledge is there, the translation detour is what slows it down. Let me first be precise about what the translation layer actually is, because there is a common misunderstanding about this. When people talk about thinking in English, they often imagine it as a binary switch. Either you are translating everything through your native language, or you have flipped a switch and are now doing all your thinking in English. But the reality is more nuanced and more useful than that. Most learners operate on a spectrum. On one end is complete translation dependence. Every thought is formed in the native language and then converted to English. On the other end is complete English independence. Thoughts are formed and expressed directly in English, with no native language involvement. Most learners sit somewhere in the middle, and the position on that spectrum shifts depending on the complexity of the thought, the familiarity of the topic, the pressure of the situation, and the strength of their English in that particular domain. The goal is not to eliminate your native language from your mind. That is neither possible nor desirable. Your native language is a fundamental part of your cognitive identity. The goal is to push your operating point further along the spectrum toward the English independent end, specifically in the situations and topics that come up most in your English conversations. The more thoughts you can form and express directly in English with no native language detour, the faster your English becomes. So how do you do this? How do you actually move thoughts from native language processing to direct English processing? The first method is deliberate English thinking practice. This means intentionally spending time each day forming thoughts in English rather than in your native language. You choose a topic, an experience from your day, a problem you are thinking through, a plan you are making, and you think it in English, not translating a thought you have already had in your native language. Forming the thought in English from the beginning. At first, this will feel slow and effortful because you are doing something unfamiliar. You will reach for native language structures and find that you have to consciously redirect. That redirecting is the work. That redirecting is what builds the new pathway. Do this for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and within weeks you will notice that certain kinds of thoughts arrive in English before your native language has a chance to form them. The second method is what I call English anchoring. English anchoring means building direct connections between concepts and their English expressions, bypassing the native language entirely. When you encounter a new concept or experience, you name it in English first, not in your native language with an English translation. You look at the morning light through the window and you think golden or quiet or slow in English, not in your native language with English labels attached afterward. You feel an emotion and you name it in English first, frustrated, curious, relieved, content. These are not translations of native language words, they are direct English names for the experience. The more you practice this anchoring, the more your experiential world becomes directly indexed in English, which means less and less of your experience has to travel through native language processing before it can be expressed. The third method targets the specific conversational domains where the translation layer is most active. For most learners, translation lag is domain-specific. In familiar, well-practiced conversational territory, direct English processing is already happening or close to it. In unfamiliar or emotionally complex territory, the native language is much more active. Identify your highest lag domains. Perhaps emotional conversations trigger more translation. Perhaps abstract intellectual discussions do. Perhaps talking about your family or your past or your ambitions. And then practice specifically in those domains. Seek out conversations, written exercises, and deliberate thinking practice focused exactly on those areas until the English in those domains becomes as direct and automatic as it is in your most comfortable areas. The fourth method is immersive thinking sprints. A thinking sprint means a period of time anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour during which you commit to doing all your internal verbalization in English. Not every thought, because many thoughts are nonverbal and do not involve language at all. But when your inner voice speaks, when you narrate your experience, plan your day, reflect on what happened, process an emotion, you commit to doing that in English for the duration of the sprint. This is one of the most powerful direct attacks on the translation layer because it specifically targets the internal language channel where translation happens. The more of your inner life that flows in English, the more English becomes the default operating language of your conscious thinking, and the less translation detour there is between your thoughts and your words. The translation layer did not appear overnight. It was built through years of native language dominance in your cognitive life. Dismantling it takes time and deliberate effort. But every English thought you form directly, every concept you anchor in English first, every speaking situation where you notice yourself going through your native language and consciously redirect, is a brick removed from that wall. And as the wall comes down, English gets faster. Not because you know more words or better grammar, because the detour is gone. The thought and the words arrive together. I want to give you one more practical tool for this specific bottleneck, and it is one of the simplest and most immediately usable. Start narrating your daily physical experiences in English silently in your mind as they happen. As you make your morning coffee, you are not translating from your native language, you are simply noticing in English. The water is boiling, the smell is strong today, I need to let it cool a little. I am already running late. These are not translated observations. They are direct English perceptions formed as you perceive, not after. Starting with purely physical and sensory experience is the easiest domain in which to build direct English thinking because the experiences are immediate, concrete, and simple enough that the native language does not have a significant head start. Build from there, moving gradually into more complex and abstract thinking as the direct English habit strengthens. 5. The speed of listening. Processing fast enough to respond fast. Here is something about conversational speed that almost nobody addresses, and it is so important that I want to give it a full lesson. The speed of your responses in English is not just determined by how fast you can produce language, it is also determined by how fast you can process incoming language, because responding fast requires finishing processing what you heard before formulating your response, and if processing is slow, by the time you finish understanding what was said, the moment for response is already passed. This is the listening speed problem, and it creates a vicious cycle for many learners. The conversation moves fast. You are still processing the last thing that was said when the next thing arrives. You fall behind. You start guessing at meaning because you did not quite catch everything. Your confidence drops. You become more anxious. Anxiety impairs processing further. You fall further behind. And the experience of being in a fast English conversation becomes genuinely exhausting, not because you lack knowledge, but because your cognitive processing speed is being overwhelmed by the input. Real-time language comprehension is a set of skills, not just a knowledge state. You can know all the vocabulary and grammar in a sentence and still process it slowly if the real-time decoding skills are underdeveloped. These skills include rapid phoneme recognition, the ability to identify English sounds instantly and accurately, rapid word segmentation, the ability to identify where one word ends and the next begins in a stream of connected sound, rapid syntactic parsing, the ability to assign grammatical roles to words as they arrive before the sentence is complete, and rapid pragmatic inference, the ability to infer implied meaning, emotional register, and conversational intent from tone, context, and discourse markers in real time. All of these are trainable, and the training principle for each is the same as it is for speaking. Push above comfortable speed consistently over time. The most powerful listening speed training method is called speed listening with gradual difficulty increase. Here is how to do it. Take any audio content in English at a level you can understand reasonably well, around 80% comprehension. Now increase the playback speed to 1.25 times normal. Listen to 5 minutes at this speed without pausing. Your comprehension will drop somewhat. That is fine. The goal is not perfect comprehension at this stage. The goal is to force your processing systems to work faster than they are comfortable working, then return to normal speed. The content will feel slightly slow, slightly clear, slightly more manageable than it did before. This contrast is the signal that your processing systems just had a workout. Repeat this process daily. Every few days, increase the speed slightly to 1.5 times, then 1.75, then double speed if you can manage it. Your comprehension at each new speed will initially be poor, but with repeated practice at each level, your brain adapts. The processing systems become faster, and what was barely comprehensible at 1.5 speed becomes entirely comfortable, and you move to 1.75. The brain is adaptive and powerful. Push it and it will respond. The second training method is called anticipatory listening. This is a subtler skill, but it makes a dramatic difference to conversational speed. Anticipatory listening means using the partial information you have already received, the beginning of a sentence, the first few words, the topic and context of the conversation, the speaker's tone and body language, to predict what is likely coming next before it arrives. Native speakers do this constantly and unconsciously. They are not just decoding what was said word by word. They are constantly generating predictions about what will be said and rapidly confirming or updating those predictions as more input arrives. This prediction process dramatically reduces the cognitive load of listening because partially predicted information requires less processing than entirely new information. You can develop anticipatory listening by practicing with the pause method. Listen to natural English audio, a podcast conversation, or a talk, and pause it after every sentence. Before you hear the next sentence, predict what is coming. What do you think the speaker will say next? What would make sense in context? What follows naturally from what has already been said? Then unpause and check your prediction. Were you right? How close were you? Over time, your predictions will become more accurate because you are building a deeper model of English conversational structure and logic. And in real conversation, that deeper model speeds up your processing significantly. The third method is training for the specific challenge of fast, informal speech. The connected speech phenomena we discussed in a previous program, the linking, the reduction, the assimilation, create comprehension challenges that are specifically about processing speed. When words blend into each other, you need fast phoneme recognition to decode them correctly. The training is deliberate exposure to fast, informal speech, starting at a level just above your current comfort, with repeated listening until the blended forms become instantly recognizable. Listen fast, process fast, and the gap between hearing and responding shrinks to the point where conversation stops feeling like a race you are always losing and starts feeling like a rhythm you are finally in. There is one more aspect of listening speed that is worth naming explicitly before we move on. Many learners focus all their listening speed practice on comprehension, on understanding what is being said faster. But there is a second component of listening that affects response speed, and it is knowing when to respond. In natural conversation, there are specific acoustic and linguistic signals that indicate a speaker is about to finish and that the floor is available. falling intonation at the end of a final sentence, completion of a recognizable syntactic structure, a slight lengthening of the final syllable, a small pause combined with eye contact. These signals are entirely automatic for native speakers. They respond at exactly the right moment without thinking about it. Many learners, still spending cognitive resources on comprehension, miss these signals and either respond too early, interrupting, or too late, creating an awkward gap. Practicing not just comprehension but also turn-taking awareness, actively noticing these signals in natural speech, is a dimension of listening speed training that pays significant dividends in real conversational fluency. 6. The fluency drills, daily practice that directly builds speaking speed. We have identified the bottlenecks. We have addressed lexical retrieval, grammar automation, the translation layer, and listening speed. Now it is time for the practical core of this program, the specific daily drills that directly and measurably build speaking speed. Not as byproducts of general practice, as the primary targeted outcome. These drills are built on a single training principle borrowed from sports science and cognitive psychology: progressive overload. In physical training, progressive overload means consistently demanding slightly more from your muscles than they are currently comfortable providing. The discomfort of that demand is what triggers adaptation and growth. The same principle applies to cognitive training. If you always practice English at your current comfortable speed, you will stay at your current speed. To get faster, you have to practice at speeds that are slightly uncomfortable. Your brain will adapt, your comfortable ceiling will rise, and what felt pressured last month will feel easy this month. The first drill is the 1-minute monologue, and it is the foundation of everything else. Set a timer for 60 seconds. Choose a topic, and speak in English continuously without stopping, without self-correcting, without pausing for more than 1 second. At the end of 60 seconds, if you finished before the timer, note how far you got. If the timer went off before you finished, note what you were still saying. Repeat the same monologue immediately. You will almost always be faster the second time because the vocabulary for that topic has been primed. On the third repetition, push to speak even faster than the second. Over time, do this with a wide variety of topics, so that you are building speed across a broad vocabulary base rather than just in a few rehearsed areas. The second drill is the question-answer sprint. Have a partner or use a recorded set of questions. Ask you questions in rapid succession. Your job is to answer each question as quickly as possible within 5 seconds of hearing it. Not correctly, not thoroughly, quickly. You get partial credit for a quick, incomplete answer. You get nothing for a slow, perfect one. The whole point of this drill is to train the brain to begin output before the internal monitoring and perfectionism systems have time to interfere. 5 seconds feels like nothing. It is not enough time to translate, to compose, to check, to revise. It forces direct, instinctive English output. And direct, instinctive output is exactly what conversational speed requires. The third drill is shadowing at speed. You are probably familiar with shadowing as a pronunciation tool, but shadowing done at speed is also one of the most powerful fluency drills that exists. Find a native speaker talking at natural conversational pace, play the audio and repeat what they say with as little delay as possible, ideally 0 delay, speaking at the exact same moment they do. This is harder than it sounds. You are not just repeating. You are processing incoming speech, generating output, monitoring your own production, and maintaining your position in the audio stream all simultaneously. This combination of simultaneous demands pushes every component of your language processing system to operate faster than it does in solo practice. Do 5 to 10 minutes of real-time shadowing every day, and within a month your speaking speed will have increased measurably. The fourth drill is the story retell under time constraint. Listen to or read a short story, between 1 and 3 minutes long. Now retell it, in your own words, in English, trying to finish the retell in the same time it took to hear or read the original. You are not trying to be perfect. You are trying to match the pace. This drill is excellent because it combines the demands of comprehension, retention, lexical retrieval, grammatical encoding, and production speed, all in a single exercise. Every component bottleneck is challenged simultaneously. The fifth drill is the debate with yourself. Choose a topic on which you have an opinion. Argue for your position as fast and as continuously as you can for 60 seconds, then immediately switch and argue the opposite position with equal speed and fluency for another 60 seconds, then switch back. The rapid switching between positions combined with the speed pressure forces your brain to access different vocabulary clusters and different grammatical structures very quickly in succession. It also builds the kind of cognitive flexibility that real conversation requires, where the direction, tone, and content of what you need to say can change instantly in response to what the other person says. The sixth drill, and the one that ties everything together, is what I call the speed conversation challenge. Find a conversation partner in person or online. Set a rule between the two of you. Nobody is allowed to pause for more than 2 seconds before responding to what was just said. If you pause for more than 2 seconds, the other person says next and immediately moves to a new topic. This gentle but real social pressure creates the nearest thing to actual conversational speed demand that you can produce in a deliberate practice setting. And because the pressure is social, it activates the same brain systems that are active in real conversation, including the mild stress response, and gives you practice managing that response while still producing fast, fluent output. Do not wait for these drills to feel comfortable before you start. They are supposed to feel uncomfortable. The discomfort is the signal that adaptation is happening. Push through it consistently, daily, and the speed that currently feels impossible will gradually become your new normal. Let me also give you a framework for how to organize these drills in your practice schedule, because attempting all 6 every single day would be overwhelming and counterproductive. The approach I recommend is a rotating focus. Each week, choose 2 or 3 of the drills to prioritize. The 1-minute monologue is a daily anchor that you do every session regardless, because it provides the broadest general speed training. Around it, rotate your focus. This week, the question-answer sprint and shadowing. Next week, the story retell and the debate with yourself. The following week, the speed conversation challenge alongside the monologue. This rotation ensures that all 6 drills get regular attention without any single session becoming too long or too cognitively demanding to sustain. Over a month, you will have put significant practice into every drill multiple times. Over 3 months, you will begin to feel changes in your conversational speed that are noticeable not just to you but to the people you speak English with. Measure your progress simply. Once a month, record yourself doing a 2-minute monologue on a topic you have not prepared for. Count the words. Over time, the word count will rise. That rising number is your speed increasing. It is measurable, visible evidence that the training is working. And on the days when the drills feel futile, when nothing seems to be improving, go back to that measurement. Let the numbers tell you what your feelings cannot always see. 7. The automatic English mind, building a brain that speaks before it thinks. We have spent 6 lessons building the technical foundations of English speaking speed, lexical retrieval training, grammar automation, translation layer elimination, listening speed development, and the specific drills that put all of it into practice under real performance pressure. All of that work is real and necessary and will produce real results. But in this final lesson, I want to go to a level deeper than technique. I want to talk about what an automatic English mind actually is, what it feels like from the inside, what it requires beyond technique to fully develop, and what the final obstacles are that stand between you and that experience of English just flowing, without effort, without delay, without the sense that you are always half a step behind the conversation. The automatic English mind is not a state where you never have to think about language. Even native speakers sometimes search for a word, sometimes construct a sentence carefully, sometimes pause to find the right expression. Language is creative, generative, and always partly effortful. The automatic English mind is a state where the routine, high-frequency operations of language are so fully automated that they require no conscious attention, leaving all your conscious processing capacity free for the genuinely novel and complex parts of what you want to say. Think of it like reading. When you first learned to read, decoding letters into sounds was effortful. Then words became recognizable units, then phrases. Now when you read your native language, you do not decode at all. The meaning arrives directly from the visual form of the words, with no conscious process in between. Your entire reading attention is free for comprehension, for engagement with ideas, for enjoyment. That is reading automaticity. And spoken language automaticity feels the same way. The mechanics are invisible. The attention goes to the meaning. Building that kind of automaticity requires 3 things beyond the technical drills of the previous lesson, and each one is worth discussing in detail. The first is volume, sheer, cumulative volume of English output. Not any particular type of output, not specifically targeted drills. but total hours of English spoken. Every hour you speak English adds to the cumulative exposure of your production systems. Every conversation, every monologue practice session, every shadowing repetition, every question-answer sprint, every casual exchange with a friend in English contributes to the gradual automation of the underlying operations. There is no substitute for volume. You cannot shortcut around it. You can optimize the quality and targeting of your practice, which is what this program has been about, but you must also produce the volume. Aim for speaking English in some form every single day for as much of each day as you can manage. The automation builds in the cumulative hours. The second is engagement. One of the most consistent findings in language acquisition research is that emotionally engaged, personally meaningful language use produces faster automaticity than detached, disengaged practice. When you are genuinely invested in what you are saying, when the communication matters to you, when the person you are speaking with is real and the exchange is meaningful, your brain processes and produces language differently than it does in mechanical drilling. The emotional investment causes the brain to allocate more resources to the language, to tag it as important, to build stronger and more retrievable memory traces. This means that the most powerful practice you can do is not drills alone. It is real conversation about things you genuinely care about with people you genuinely want to communicate with. Seek this out. Seek people and communities and topics that make you want to speak English. The wanting is not just motivational, it is neurological. It changes how the learning happens. The third is patience with the plateau. Every learner who is building toward automatic English will hit what feels like a speed plateau, a period, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, where they are practicing consistently and not feeling any faster. The temptation at this stage is to conclude that the practice is not working, or that they have reached their limit, or that there is something fundamentally different about them that prevents further progress. This is almost never true. Speed plateaus in language are the same as speed plateaus in athletics and music. They are periods of consolidation during which the brain is integrating previous learning at a deeper level, preparing for the next jump. The practice is working. The progress is happening at a neural level that is not yet visible in performance, and the learners who push through the plateau, who maintain their practice without reducing it during the flat period, are the ones who experience the sudden, sometimes dramatic jump in fluency that follows. Keep practicing through the plateau. The jump is coming. I want to close with something that I think captures the entire arc of this program in a single image. Think of the first time you tried to juggle. If you have ever tried, you know exactly what happens. You throw one ball and you catch it. You throw two balls and you drop both, because managing two simultaneously is too much. Your attention keeps jumping between them. You cannot process fast enough to handle two at once. And if someone, while you are trying to juggle, asks you a question, you drop everything immediately because there is no cognitive capacity left over. Now think of someone who has been juggling for years. They can juggle 3, 4, 5 balls while talking, while walking, while making you laugh. The juggling has become automatic. It requires almost no conscious attention. And so all of their conscious attention is free for everything else: the conversation, the performance, the enjoyment of the skill itself. Fluent English speaking is juggling. When you are learning, managing the words and the grammar and the pronunciation and the listening and the social context all at the same time is overwhelming. You drop things, you slow down, you lose balls. But with the right training applied consistently over time, each of those components becomes automatic. First one, then another, until the whole act runs without conscious management and your attention is free for what language is actually for: the ideas, the connection, the human exchange. That is where you are going, and the path is clear now. The bottlenecks are named, the drills are designed, the principles are understood. Everything that is left is the work, and the work, as you now know, is specific, targeted, daily, and absolutely capable of getting you to where you want to be. Think faster, speak faster, not by rushing, by building the automatic English mind that makes speed feel like the most natural thing in the world. It is being built right now. Keep going. 7 lessons, 1 complete transformation in how you understand and train English processing speed. Let me gather everything together. In Lesson 1, we named the 4 cognitive bottlenecks that make English feel slow: lexical retrieval speed, the delay in finding words under pressure, grammatical encoding speed, the conscious effort still required to produce certain structures, Conceptual translation lag, the subconscious routing of thoughts through the native language before English expression. And phonological assembly speed, the time required to prepare sounds for production in less practiced words. Naming all four means you can target all four, rather than training vaguely and hoping for the best. In Lesson 2, we built the lexical speed training system. The rapid word association chain builds continuous output under pressure. Semantic field activation through topic-based vocabulary clustering primes entire vocabulary neighborhoods so words across a conversational domain arrive faster. And timed image description provides a full workout for the word-finding system across multiple semantic fields simultaneously. Words that used to escape you under pressure begin arriving before you need them. In Lesson 3, we tackled grammar automation, the drilling to automaticity method. Fast oral repetition of structures at above comfortable speed is how grammatical encoding moves from conscious rule application to instant automatic production, targeting the highest frequency structures first, question forms, perfect aspects, conditionals, modal verbs, produces the largest and most immediately felt improvements in conversational fluency. In Lesson 4, we went inside the translation layer. Deliberate English thinking practice, English anchoring of direct experience, domain-specific translation reduction in your highest lag conversational areas, and immersive thinking sprints are how you push your operating point along the spectrum from translation dependence toward English independence. Eliminating the translation detour produces speed gains that no amount of vocabulary or grammar improvement alone can match. In Lesson 5, we addressed listening speed, the underappreciated half of conversational speed, speed listening with gradual difficulty increase, anticipatory listening through the pause and predict method, and targeted practice with fast, informal, connected speech are how you build a processing system fast enough to fully decode natural English in real time, leaving cognitive capacity available for response formulation rather than using it all on comprehension. In Lesson 6, we built the drill toolkit, the 1-minute monologue for broad speed building across diverse topics, the question-answer sprint for training instinctive output before the monitoring systems interfere, shadowing at speed for simultaneous processing and production under real-time pressure, the story retell under time constraint for integrating all components simultaneously, the debate with yourself for building cognitive flexibility under speed pressure, and the speed conversation challenge for applying all of it in a socially pressured practice context that mirrors real conversation demands. These 6 drills done daily produce measurable and consistent improvement in speaking speed. And in Lesson 7, we built the automatic English mind, volume, the non-negotiable accumulation of total English output hours, emotional engagement, seeking genuine, meaningful English conversation that activates deeper neural processing. And patience with the plateau, the essential understanding that flat periods in development are consolidation phases, not failure signals, and that pushing through them is what produces the sudden, dramatic jumps in fluency that define the path to automatic English. Speed is not a gift, it is a construction, built component by component, drill by drill, conversation by conversation, thinking sprint by thinking sprint, until the machinery of English becomes invisible, and all that is left is the meaning you are making and the connections you are building. You are building it right now. Every word of this program that landed in your mind is a tool you now carry. Every drill you commit to is a component of the machinery being built. Every conversation you push yourself into, every second you hold against the hesitation and speak anyway, every thought you form in English before your native language can form it first, is a step. The automatic English mind is not a destination you arrive at suddenly. It is a state you grow into gradually, so gradually that one day you realize you have been there for a while without noticing the transition. And when that realization comes, and it will come, it will feel like the most natural thing in the world. Because by then it will be. I want to add one final thought to this lesson, because it speaks to something that holds many learners back even after they understand everything we have covered. That thought is about the relationship between speed and trust. Speaking faster requires trusting your English in a way that careful, slow, monitored speech does not require. When you speak slowly and carefully, you are checking yourself at every step. You are verifying each word before you commit to it, reviewing each grammatical choice, scanning ahead for potential errors. That constant checking feels like quality control, and in careful written composition it is. But in spoken conversation, it is the very behavior that creates the delay you are trying to eliminate. Building speed requires building trust. Trust that the word you need will arrive if you reach for it without hesitation. Trust that your grammatical instincts trained through hundreds of hours of use will produce something correct enough. Trust that the listener wants to understand you and will extend the generosity needed to meet you halfway. Trust that you are, right now, at this moment in your development, good enough to be in the conversation without qualifying every word and verifying every structure before it leaves your mouth. That trust is not blind. It is evidence-based. It is built from the accumulation of successful conversations, recovered stumbles, and completed exchanges that builds all real confidence. And it grows with every drill you do, every conversation you push yourself through, every moment you choose to speak instead of staying silent. Trust your English, trust the training, and let the speed follow naturally from both. 7 lessons, 1 complete system for building the automatic English mind. Let me gather it all together. In Lesson 1, we named the 4 cognitive bottlenecks with precision: lexical retrieval speed, grammatical encoding speed, conceptual translation lag, and phonological assembly speed. Each one is distinct, each one responds to different training. And identifying your own primary bottleneck allows you to invest your practice time where it will produce the greatest and most immediate results. In Lesson 2, we built the lexical speed training system. The rapid word association chain, topic-based vocabulary clustering for semantic field activation, and timed image description together build a production retrieval system that gets faster and more reliable under exactly the pressure that real conversation creates. Words begin arriving before you consciously reach for them. In Lesson 3, we tackled grammar automation through the drilling to automaticity method. Fast, oral, repetitive production of structures at above comfortable speed moves grammatical encoding from conscious rule application to invisible automatic execution. When grammar disappears from your conscious attention, everything you are spending on it is suddenly available for meaning. That reallocation is what fluency feels like from the inside. In Lesson 4, we went inside the translation layer. Deliberate English thinking practice, English anchoring of direct experience, domain-specific translation reduction, sensory narration as a starting point, and immersive thinking sprints together push your operating point steadily away from translation dependence and toward direct English thinking. Every thought that forms in English first is a faster thought than any thought that routes through your native language first. In Lesson 5, we address the underappreciated half of conversational speed, listening processing speed. Speed listening with progressive overload, anticipatory listening through pause and predict practice, targeted exposure to fast connected speech, and turn-taking signal awareness together build a real-time comprehension system fast enough to fully decode natural English and still have cognitive capacity available for formulating your response before the moment passes. In Lesson 6, we built the complete drill toolkit with a rotation framework for sustainable daily practice and a monthly measurement system for tracking real progress. The 1-minute monologue, the question-answer sprint, shadowing at speed, the story retell under time constraint, the debate with yourself, and the speed conversation challenge are 6 tools that, used consistently and progressively, produce measurable, compounding improvements in English-speaking speed. And in Lesson 7, we built the automatic English mind itself, volume without compromise, emotional engagement in genuinely meaningful English use, patience through the plateau, and the trust that lets practiced language run without the constant interference of conscious monitoring. Speed is not the reward at the end of learning English. Speed is a dimension of English that is trained alongside everything else, through the right methods, applied with consistency and courage. You now have the methods, you have the understanding, you have the framework. Everything that remains is the daily, committed, joyful work of building the automatic English mind that makes speed feel like the most natural thing in the world. Think faster, speak faster, not by rushing, by building. You are already building. Keep going.